strong constitution. Plus, I knew what to do with it. I attacked it with vitamin C. They started treating
truck or almost
on
anything with wheels to the
on
National
StreamYard
Federation of
now.
the Blind. Your donation will help ensure a
I
brighter
started
future for
attacking it
blind
with
children
vitamin
and
C
adults.
when I
Just call
woke up
855
on Saturday
659
morning with a throbbing
9314.
tonsil.
That's 855
20,000 milligrams every
659
2 hours for like 12
9314.
hours.
Or visit
And then the tonsil,
carshelpingtheblind.org.
there was no more
That's
pain. Still tested
carshelpingtheblind.org. We
positive,
will
but
arrange to have
you
the
have to. They
donated
started
vehicle picked up
treating
and
patients
provide
in New
you with a
York with
tax
vitamin
deductible
C.
receipt. And if you know
Uh,
someone who is blind that
like in
can
March
use
of
our
2020,
help,
I read
email
that to the audience because
nfb at
there were
nfb.org.
even
10
though
seconds.
President Trump was talking about hydrochloroquine, which really does work.
WCPT 820, Chicago's
People were
progressive
not
talk,
believing
where
it.
facts matter.
And I had friends who worked in the White House.
Change the world, change the world, change the
Here we go.
world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
Hello,
This is the
everybody.
Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Get a little bit of feedback. It's Monday, November 20th, 2023. We are ready for Thanksgiving. I am Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Yes, I'm back. And yes, I did have COVID. Remember, my parents had COVID, and they're doing quite well. Thank God. But I really, stayed close to my mom, and because she wasn't hospitalized, but I wanted to make sure that she got all the tests and yada yada yada. And I was in a pod with her, a little pod where we were elbow to elbow for like 12 hours, and she was sneezing, and I was wearing a couple of N95 masks, but whatever it is, I got it. But I did do some things that I'd read about, and that I just really boosted. I just put my immune system on overdrive. And now I'm no doctor, but I did read to you a couple of years ago that in New York they started treating these patients with vitamin C. COVID patients, and so I said, okay, let me do what it is that I can to push on through this. And I got onto the other side, but I still had the vestiges of walking pneumonia. So last week I really had to dedicate myself to getting well enough to be with you today. So I'm here. Praise the Lord. I'm here and getting ready for Thanksgiving. Hope that you are too. It's a joy to be with you today. We're going to be talking about several things. We have, I've had this group, If Not Now, young Jewish activists who are having an internal discussion about how they deal with what's happening over in Israel and Palestine now, Gaza and the West Bank. They're calling for an end to apartheid over there. They're calling for a two-state solution. They're calling for peace. They're calling for a ceasefire. And they are organizing it. I've told them that they have a home here, because anyone who's pushing for peace, they have a home here on the Santita Jackson Show. And I think it's important for us to hear from members of the Jewish community, because we're conflating and you're seeing attacks upon Jewish people on the rise, but you're seeing attacks upon Arabs on the rise. But that's been the case. That's never been forbidden. That's something that we have tolerated, attacks upon Arab people. And so there's that. So what we're trying to do is, look toward peace on the Santita Jackson Show. And then looking at the global South, South Africa is going to take Israel to the International Criminal Court. Oh, yeah, the global South is pushing. They're pushing. So what does that mean? What does it mean when Africa comes together? And the leader on the continent really is South Africa, economically, spiritually, for a whole lot of reasons. And so what does all that mean? So everybody, I want you to meet me here on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. And I want you to go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. And let's talk about these issues and what to you are the big issues of the day. And sending a happy birthday to our president, Joe Biden, 81 years of age today. Everybody stop talking about his age. With age comes wisdom. Yeah, I think this discussion about his age is really false. It really is. Because you want someone, when you really, really want some good, solid advice, you go to older people. They've seen a lot. I think the pushback has been, is he healthy enough? I mean, look, three of the most popular politicians, you don't have to like, you do not have to like Donald Trump, but he's one of the most popular politicians in America. Bernie Sanders is the most popular elected official in America. And Donald Trump's almost 80. And Bernie Sanders is past 80, and our president is past 80, and I'm glad about it. How about that? I want some grown people to be in charge and some younger people like Kamala Harris and others to learn from them. How about that? Yes. Well, let's get right to it, everybody. So call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, dedicating the show to the great First Lady, former First Lady, Rosalynn Carter. She is truly a forever First Lady. Humanitarian. She and her husband, Jimmy Carter, he said the greatest accomplishment of his life has been being married to her. That was the best decision he made, and it did. And it was. They were married 77 years. She said, I was married all of my life. Yes, and it worked. It worked not just because he became president, but look at who he was. Look at who he is. Look at who they are. Teaching Sunday school, Habitat for Humanity. The Carter Center is a epicenter for peacemaking all around the world. That's what they have stood for. I'll never forget Pastor Bobby Lewis, my next door neighbor. Boy, oh boy, we've had some good times growing up. And dedicate the show to your sister, Denise, one of my big sisters who made her transition. I remember coming downstairs one morning, and I was a junior in high school, and my father was talking to President Carter. And he put me on the phone with him, and it was nice to chat with him and all of that. And he asked me what I wanted to do with my life, and, I said medicine. I didn't really want to do that, but whatever. That's another story. And he said, I thought you'd go into law, maybe the ministry. He said, those are really lofty professions, Santita, and da. And when my father got off the phone with him, he said he's going to be one of the great presidents. And then later on that fall of 1980, when he became President Carter's chief surrogate because President Carter by that time was so unpopular, he could not even campaign for himself. So my father had to do it. My father turned to me at the airport the last Saturday before the election, and he said, he's being treated like the N-word. I've never seen anything like it. He said, but in time, you will see that he'll become our most beloved and most popular ex-president because of what he's standing for. And the person who helped, who was his spine, was Rosalynn Carter. Hats off to you, a virtuous woman. Proverbs 31. That is exactly who she was. That is who she is. And we thank God for Rosalynn Carter today, standing for the mentally ill, standing for all of those who stood in a place of challenge in the world. We love you, Rosalynn Carter. Everything that a woman, that a lady, that a mother, that a grandmother, a great-grandmother, a woman of God should be. God bless you. So let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. We have more than 13,000 people dead in Gaza, according to, the Gaza Health Ministry. Ooh. And another attack upon the Jabalia refugee camp. 32 members of one family were killed, 19 of them children. Wow. Protesters are demanding a ceasefire. They shut down the California Democratic Convention over the past few days. And the deputy Knesset speaker of the Israeli parliament, Nassim Vatari, said, we are too humane. Burn Gaza now. Wow. What is going on, everybody? And Bernie Sanders continues to stand firmly against a ceasefire, but he is calling for a conditional meeting out of U.S. military aid to Israel. He's saying, look, we have to put restraints on that. What we need to do is tie aid to a de-escalation, if you will, and a humanitarian cause. So we will see what that is going to be. The World Health Organization evacuated 31 babies from a Gaza hospital, but the babies are dying because there's not enough electricity, fuel, etc., all of that. It's a whole lot. And a far-right radical won Argentina's presidency yesterday, Javier Milei, everybody. So is that the trend of the future? We will see. In Chicago, we are going to have an interesting day. It's going to be 49 degrees and high. Might have some rain, but it will be cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 45 degrees, rain. It will be cloudy and rainy. In the NFL, well, Chicago and Minnesota, we struggled yesterday. The Lions 31, the Bears 26, the Broncos 21, the Vikings 20 in a heartbreaker. In the NBA, the Heat will be playing the Bulls tonight, and the Knicks will be playing the Timberwolves. In the NHL, the Sabres 3, Chicago 2, the Maple Leafs 4, yay! And they were, well, not really, over the Minnesota Wild. But those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. Pastor Robert Burton Lewis, how are you doing?
Doing wonderful. How are you, Santita?
Well, bless your heart. Bless your heart. You gave me some heartbreaking news before we came on the air. My big sister, your big sister, has made her transition, but we dedicate the show to Denise today. Dawn and I, your sister, who was my best friend, we used to go into her room and get the books, Alice in Wonderland. Oh boy, we had some fun. And Denise would take us downtown, and she was always of such good cheer while she had to deal with these giggly girls. And we get on the IC and head downtown and then have a little lunch at Marshall Fields, et cetera, et cetera. And I just thank God for Denise today. And I thank God for you, and I thank God for her family.
She was the neighborhood big sister. I tell you, she used to tell me about, because she's 16 years older than me, and she used to tell me about how she used to walk me around the neighborhood pretending that I was her baby.
Because you look like you were her baby, Bobby. Okay. So I'm just saying, you and Yusuf are at the end of the line here, just about.
I know.
Okay. But we thank God for her life and for her living today. The 7 Lewis kids, we were like, are they trying to break a record? I mean,
Right.
Oh, but boy, oh boy, what wonderful times we have had with the Lewises, and we thank God for your mother today, for Mrs. Geraldine Lewis, for all of the good times that she gave us. We thank God for your father, the great Ramsey Lewis, and the great Mrs. Geraldine Lewis, because she established a home not just for you, but for the whole neighborhood. You knew you could go over to the Lewis's house and get something to eat all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
The door was always open.
The door was always open. Always open. Then y'all come over to our yard, mess up our grass, even though you had perfect turf, but I'm going to leave that alone. But
that was the best part of the day. Hopping over that fence, it was the best part of the day. Couldn't wait to finish breakfast so I could jump over that fence and hang out with Yusuf and play basketball.
Well, I did the reverse. I didn't hop over the fence. I walked down the front, and then I opened the door, and then I walked aside the fence, and then I went in, and Dawn and I hung out either in her room or mine or Denise's room. So sending you so much love today. Well, what's the good news? Because this has got to be a time of challenge for you, but it's a time of challenge for a lot of people as we go into this holiday season.
It is. And, as I heard you, reading the headlines, everything that's going on in the world, it is still for us to center. It's still for us to center our minds and be thankful, regardless of what's going on in the world and what's going on in our personal lives. God has done wonders for us. And so as we gather around our tables this Thanksgiving, I want us to embrace the fullness of this blessed season. This is not just a time for feasting. It's a divine appointment for gratitude and a sacred moment to recognize the bountiful hand of God in our lives. The psalmist declares, "Oh, give thanks unto the Lord, for God is good, for God's steadfast love endures forever." This week, as we reflect upon these words, let's acknowledge the goodness of the Lord, not only in the abundance on our tables, but in the richness of our relationships, the strength we find in trials, and the hope that resonates in our spirits. Remember, the same God who provided manna in the wilderness is providing for you in your wilderness. God who made a way for you and will make a way for you in your trials and tribulations. So do you not see this? And that's what I want us to really focus. Sometimes we get distracted on everything else in our lives, but God has made a way for us, and God's mercies are new every morning, and God's faithfulness is as vast as the sky. So this Thanksgiving, let it be more than just a holiday. Let it be a holy day, a day that we set apart to truly give thanks for the Lord's unending grace and mercy. Let us be like the one leper who, out of 10, returned to give thanks. Let us not just receive our blessings, but also return to the source of our blessings with a heart full of gratitude. So gather with your loved ones, brothers and sisters, break the bread, share the meal, but most importantly, share the love that flows from a grateful heart. Let your thanks go up and watch God's blessings come down. Be blessed this Thanksgiving, knowing that you are a cherished child of the Most High God, and let God's love for you let you know that it has no bounds. Amen. Amen. So
Amen.
I'm just asking everyone that, we all have things that have gone on in our lives, the trials and tribulations, the victories of life. But God holds true in all that we do. He loves us through it all. And he is a way maker. He's a strong provider. God's love endures forever. Amen.
Let me ask you this before you go. How do you make it through this season? I mean, we have laughed and joked about the 7 Lewis kids. Eventually, there were 5 Jacksons, and the Thompsons had 5. We knew the people who were trying to break the bank in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But you've had to return them back to God, because that's where they are, and they're waiting on us on the other side. Ramsey and Kevin and Denise.
Yeah.
How do you, and now and your mother and your father, but you have so many precious memories. How do you get through a season like this?
Santita, you just hit it on the head. Is that, the richness. I was talking to Dawn, Santita, and she said, we keep losing our brothers and sisters. And I said, you know what, Dawn, we do, but that's really the idea. We have a big family, and we have so many memories of love, and I call it proof of life. I can remember all the big Thanksgiving celebrations and Christmas celebrations, and just playing music in the living room and playing music outside, and just having great times playing basketball. And so that's what brings me joy. It's not so much promise that we'll reach a certain age. It's not the quantity of life, but it's the quality of life. And so I'm reminded of the quality of love that we share together. I'm reminded of the quality of friends and family that we have. And this right here, being able to talk to you, and I can smile because I can see you in the house. I can see you hanging out with Denise. That's what brings me joy, and that's what gives me strength. And that's how perfect God is, because you called and we're able to come together here and talk about just the strength, power of the love that our family has for one another. But that's really evidence of God's love. So that's how I get through it.
Amen. And when you think about, that's what Dr. King's father, Daddy King, said after he'd lost his son, Dr. King, and then a year and a few months later, he lost his son, AD, and then his wife was murdered on the organ at church. And he was at a big Baptist convention where my father was speaking, where all the big preachers were, right? And he went through, and my father said, you almost felt sad for him because he had to come after all the biggest, most profound, what the church wreckers, as they're known, the preachers who just lay you out in the middle of the floor. And he went through, you know what? When God took my son Martin, I didn't think I'd be able to make it. And then he said, but then I turned around, I lost my baby AD the following August. Then my wife, I looked to my left, Someone walked in the church just after she finished playing and shot her to death. He said, but I don't think about what I've lost. I think about what I have left. And yet will I trust him?
Praise God.
Praise God. And, and sending much love to Denise today. My big sister. I think about all those memories and her braces. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. And then her having the braces taken off. Oh, yes. Oh, these are the things these are the precious memories. And these memories are precious. And, since today is a memory, tomorrow, make today a precious one. Really appreciate it for what it is. Pastor Lewis, how can we worship with you?
I would love for y'all to join us at Joy Life Center, 9401 South of Oakley on the south side of Chicago in the Beverly area. And if you can't get to us, which we'd love to see in person, but if you can't get to us in person, you can join us via YouTube at Joy Life Center or on Facebook at Joy Life Center. Either way, we'd love to hear from you. And you can go to joylifecenter.org and just type in, there's a space there where you can click on the button on how to get involved, and you can join us as a supporter, as a volunteer, or even as a member if you choose to do so after visiting us a couple times. And we just love to share the information with you of what we're doing. Santita, we gave away over 30 turkeys a couple days ago to families in need, families who were going through drug addiction, parents who are restoring their lives, and they just did not have the capacity to serve Thanksgiving dinner for their families. And so we provided 30 turkeys to those families. And we're looking to give more turkeys away through this, dinners away through this holiday season for families in need. And we just started Joy Life Center Academy, Santita. Every Wednesday, we provide homework help, drama classes, and creative movement classes to kids from kindergarten through 8th grade for free.
And the address real quick before I go to commercial?
9401 South Oakley in Chicago.
Amen.
Well, in the Beverly.
And by the way, dirty little secret is Bobby's also one of the best. Pastor Robert, excuse me. He's one of the best musicians. I mean, there is something, there's a genetic component to this, but their father practiced him to death. The last gospel album he did, he and his brother produced, and boy, it is something incredible. I love you, Pastor Bobby.
I love you too, Santita.
All right.
I can't wait to talk to you again.
I can't wait. Dr. Knighton, stay right there. Got to get a few minutes from you because we are in the season. 'Tis the season to pass these infections around, but we're not going to do that. We're going to be well. And we're going to be talking about the Middle East here on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Pastor Bobby, thank you so much here.
I love you.
I love you. And would you send me Dawn's number?
I will. I'll send it right away.
Okay, please send it to me because I need to call her.
All right, and I'll reach out to the fam. Happy Thanksgiving, and I hope we can get this back on schedule. I do miss it.
No. I will. Look. You have space here. Yeah, I told you that, and I meant it.
Yep. And then we got a concert to do too. So
you know what?
As you're feeling better. Can
you talk to me? Can we talk later? Can you call me a little bit later today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's do that. Because I'd like to take that to Dad.
Oh, beautiful.
Okay. Let's do that.
All right.
It can be something ad hoc that we pull together, like right in through here. But I just think it's important that we just start that. And qualitatively, the music needs to be in a certain place. Hello. So.
Yeah. I've been talking to folks over at the office, so I'm trying to stay connected. I had a couple conversations with Yusef as well. So I know there's a couple celebrations going on soon.
Okay, well let's work on this one.
Yeah. I'm all for it. I'm your biggest cheerleader, Santita.
Well, no, let's go on and talk about it. Let's go on and talk about it today, and just go on and get it done. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
want to talk about it today because I'm back up and I'm back in the saddle.
Okay, fantastic. Let's do it. I'll call you this afternoon.
Okay, sweetie, love
Sending
you.
Dr. Knighton, Rachel Lightabuff, and Jonah Karsh through.
Dr. Knighton, how are you? Dr. Knighton?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Oh, honey, I'm doing well. That was Pastor Lewis. I grew up next door to him, and his sister passed away, and I did not, his sister, who was like one of my big sisters. So it was like, oh boy, that was it was just a lot.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I am too, but absence from us is presence with the Lord. It's the only thing that gives me a little bit of well, it doesn't give me a little bit of peace, it gives me a lot of peace. So, but I have got Rachel. Are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm so sorry to hear about your loss, Santita. That's really hard.
You know what it is, but I am so grateful. Well, it's a wonderful thing when you start thinking about people and they make you smile.
Yeah, for sure.
And when I think about Denise, I start to smile. And just think of all of these wonderful, wonderful memories that we do have. And
60 seconds, everyone.
I just feel very blessed. But I've got about 3 minutes that I've got to give to Dr. Knighton. Dr. Knighton, you've spoken with Shauna, right? You'll speak with her today?
I texted her this morning, yes.
Okay,
I
fantastic.
texted her today. Yep.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
No. Let me know how that goes. But Shauna's thorough. I just didn't want to see you jump on a plane.
Oh, I'm still probably.
Well, no, I didn't want you to do it aimlessly.
Yeah.
Because if you can have a congressional office speaking on your behalf, that helps a lot. Trust me.
10 seconds, everyone.
Okay, stand by, everybody. Jonah, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, sweetie, it's good to hear your voice. Stand by.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. And of course, you hear my little chug-a-lug. You all want to name my little printer? You can. I'm about to get a new one. But you are more than welcome to, like you name the Morning Stars. I want you to call us at 773-763-9278. I hear something in the background. And it's not just my computer. But let's just talk about the Middle East. Let's talk about protesters who actually, they shut down the California Democratic Convention this past weekend. I mean, more than 68% of Americans want a ceasefire, but only 34 members of Congress have signed on to that. What's going on? Why are we so far? Why is Congress so far away from our desires? We got to talk about that, everybody, on the Santita Jackson Show. So call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Let's talk about it. And, but first, it is the holiday season. We've got Thanksgiving and everybody's going to be gathering, getting together, and yada, yada. I think it's great. That having been said, you want to protect yourself. And so Dr. Shanita Knight, an infection preventionist, talk to us. What do you want us to look out for as we're about to gather on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday? This is the season.
Good morning, Santita. So one of the things that I want to remind people is to be safe and sorry. Meaning that, yes, fellowship is all fun. Fellowship is a wonderful thing. But doing so safely is much more important because while the holiday will last for one day, illness lasts for weeks, and it takes time to recover from, and it can deter you from everything, including your goals, being around others, being healthy, and you have to go through that recovery period. So with that being said, I'm just going to remind people it's all about checks and balances. So if you know that you're going to be partaking in a lot of sweets on the holiday, just please be mindful that it only takes 75 grams of sugar to lower your immune system for 5 hours. So if you're eating sugar on top of sugar on top of sugar, understand that you are at risk. So if you are at risk by eating, let's say, sweets, but then you're around someone that is ill, those two factors just within themselves will put you at higher risk of developing whatever illness that they have, or if they're spreading droplets, it'll make you more at risk for getting a cold because your immune system is at that point compromised. And so I say that because many people think that, hey, we all have to be immunocompromised to be sickly, to be at risk. But in fact, we're all at risk when we are in a situation of where sugar is the culprit of lowering our immune system, when we are exposed to other people that are ill. With that, just be mindful that if you're having people over or going somewhere, that everyone will be touching similar surfaces such as doorknobs, handles. Just make sure that you're cleaning your hands in between. Be mindful of how food is served, how people are moving around food, making sure that they're not talking over food. And then just make sure that if anything, you are in an environment where there is some sort of open circulation to where you're not breathing in the same air that can potentially make you sick.
What is 75 grams of sugar? What is that? I mean, is that a glass
That's
of
a
orange juice? Or, I mean, what is that?
Yes. Yep, it is. Well, that's a tall glass of OJ, so about 12 ounces. Or that could be a pastry and a cup of coffee, like some sort of latte and a muffin. So it does not take a lot. Operative word, as I said, it lowers the immune system for 5 hours. So let's say if I eat that pastry and I have that coffee at 7 a.m. and then I turn around and I decide to have a cookie at noon, which is, let's say, within the 5 hour time frame, then it's almost like my clock is starting over and over in terms of sugar. And so that's why there is this limitation of carbs, or there's this spreading out of carbs, just to ensure that your sugar intake is not going to be that high where your immune system is essentially going to keep crashing and crashing over and over again without you being able to make a full recovery.
Everybody, hey, Dr. Nina, Heydrnina. She has some of the best, most practical advice. In fact, she's heading out of the country in a few days to lecture overseas about infection prevention. And we are so blessed to have her every single day on the Santita Jackson Show. Follow her in social media, on social media. Get involved with her in social media. Heydrnina. Hey, Dr. Nina. Sending you so much love. Hope to talk to you tomorrow if you're not on a plane going somewhere.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. I'm crossing my fingers. I don't have to, but if I am, then yes, absolutely.
I'm like, I don't know where this girl's going to go, but here we go. I love you. God bless you. You know what? Thank you so much. We've been talking about a ceasefire. At least 68% of Americans want a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, in the West Bank, you're seeing settlers attack people who live in the West Bank. The tensions in that part of the world are extremely high. And yet Americans more and more are calling for a ceasefire. They're calling for peace. They're calling for justice. And none more loudly than members of the Jewish community. Yes, young, mature, they're doing it. And this group, If Not Now, is such an interesting, wonderful amalgamation of that community. They're coming together. They're having an internal dialogue. They're inviting us to join with them, but they're also having what you would call family talk about how you deal with these questions of where Israel goes from here. And so I'm just really, really excited to have them with us. I told them, look, as long as you're calling for peace, you have a place on this show. If you're calling for war, I got a problem with that. I do. Blessed are the peacemakers. And I think it's Rachel. You know how we mature women do it. Rachel Ida Buff, professor of history. You know, I love it because I love being older. I really do. And of course, She's at the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, but she is from Jewish Voice for Peace and Never Again Action in Wisconsin. And of course, we welcome Jonah Karsh to the show, who's a jazz pianist. You know, I love this because, I'm a musician in my other life, young man. And of course, he's the political lead at If Not Now Chicago. So welcome both of you to the show. Talk to us about If Not Now. What is If Not Now to you, and what do you hope to do with it? Let me start with you, Jonah.
Sure, absolutely, Santita, and thank you so much for having me on. I'm an admirer of your singing as well. If Not Now is an organization of American Jews who are opposed to Israel's apartheid system and U.S. support for it. And so we're trying to change the U.S. support for Israel's apartheid system and move away from that and towards a future of justice, equality, and human rights and democracy for all Israelis and all Palestinians. And what we believe is that as long as Israel maintains what Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International and the largest Israeli human rights organization, B'Tselem, call an apartheid system, that's not going to be possible.
What made you arrive to the conclusion that Israel had an apartheid system when President Jimmy Carter, may peace and love be with his family today as they celebrate the long, fruitful life of Mrs. Rosalind Carter, our forever First Lady. When he first asserted that Israel was an apartheid state, he was condemned by many people. He was cheered by many as well. What got you to that conclusion? Because you kind of have to go counterculture in order to, not kind of, you have to go counterculture to get there. Jonah?
Certainly. I think there was a time when many people in the Jewish community would hear the words of people like the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, or Jimmy Carter saying, if Israel maintains its presence in the West Bank and doesn't make peace with the Palestinians, then it ceases to be Jewish and democratic, and it becomes an apartheid state. And I think it became clear over time that Israel was going to, not only was Israel going to stay in the West Bank forever, if without any pressure to do otherwise, but that the whole regime that operates between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, which includes the blockade of Gaza, which includes enforced segregation in schools and towns inside of Israel, was one system that enforced hegemony of one group, Jewish people, over another group, the Palestinian people. And that takes on different degrees in different parts of the country. But I think as I started to understand and see these reports coming out from human rights organizations, it became much more clear to me that this is an apartheid system.
We're talking with Jonah Karsh, political lead for If Not Now Chicago. And of course, another member of If Not Now and Jewish Voice for Peace and Never Again Action in Wisconsin is a professor of history from the University of Wisconsin. My sister in maturity, Rachel Ida Buss. I think we need to lift that up, but that's another story for another day. I think that's important. I think it really is. What about, would you give us context for this? Because you're an historian. Where do you see this? I mean, where do you see many people? I mean, it seems that the American view of what's been happening in the Middle East, and particularly in Gaza and the West Bank and Israel, it seems like it changed. It seems like it flipped overnight. Or what, has this been a process?
Yeah, it is really, really impressive, the numbers. You were saying 68% of Americans support a ceasefire. I mean, I think there are a number of things at work there among Jews, and I think this is where the idea that this is a generational change is actually not wrong. Among younger Jews, the idea that Israel is a key part of Judaism and that we must support Israel at all costs is really waning, as it just doesn't have the traction it did a generation ago. So, I mean, I think you see this moment of, sort of this beautiful fluorescence of Jewish radical protest coming out of, the process that Jonah described, the slow realization that the regime in Israel is apartheid, is racist, is at this point, actively exterminationist, and I think that realization, which has sort of been a slow burn among Jews, is a really quick turnaround for a lot of people just looking at the news from Gaza. I think on October 7th, the world mourned with Israel. And I think by, a week later, when it was clear that that all of our grief about the attacks, the Hamas attacks on the 7th, all of our grief was to be immediately weaponized into this terrible genocidal campaign of murder directed at civilians, whether they're called human shields or otherwise, civilians, children, innocents. I think that, we look at that, we read the news, and people who maybe haven't been involved or politicized on this issue still feel like that's wrong. That's a big majority of the American people, but you kind of set up the conversation by saying, wow, 68% of the American people, but only 34 Congress people have signed on. I think the long kind of lockstep between the United States and Israel politically, which is enforced by AIPAC, which is enforced by, evangelical Christian Zionists. I think that's very hard for politicians to shake. I know in Wisconsin, we've been working very hard on our progressive reps, like our Senator Tammy Baldwin, our Representative Gwen Moore, and trying to get them to move on Israel. We've been working with Moore for years and saying, you have to attend, you have to sign on to, the Betty McCollum has had a bill in Congress for years saying, U.S. aid should be conditional on not detaining Palestinian children in prison. And we can't get Gwen Moore to sign on to that because of, this idea that what benefits America is, endless military support of Israel, no matter what, that it's our proxy in the region, that it's the only democracy in the Middle East. These things aren't true, but they're very powerful. And we've seen the censoring of Rashida Tlaib for using the words that Jonah just used so beautifully, from the river to the sea, which is both kind of an incantation, a liberation incantation, and a geographical description of what's going on. She said that, and they said, she got censored for that. We're at a terribly repressive moment, and I think our political leaders, unfortunately, are rather timid.
Well, why was it a repressive moment? I mean, because when you say from the river to the sea, it evokes all kinds of emotion. I mean, I think the people who want justice for Palestinians, they don't see that as the elimination of Jewish people. They see that as an affirmation, and it seems that you see it that way too. What does the phrase mean to you? What does it mean?
I mean, I use the word incantation advisedly, right? Because it's a vision of liberation that we hold as we march, as we imagine what could be possible in Palestine, right? And, I'm a historian in part of McCarthyism, when if you said things a certain way or associated with certain people, you could be suspect. And, that's what we're seeing when we have universities like Columbia and Brandeis censoring student orgs. I've worked with student orgs my entire career. And the wonderful thing about students is, there's new ones every 4 years. They're idealistic. They're figuring things out. And the idea that they can't have an organization called Students for Justice in Palestine or Jewish Voice for Peace on campus, that's too threatening, tells us that we're at, one of your speakers yesterday used the phrase, an inflection point. Things are changing really fast and the powers that be are scared.
Well, but the thing is that has been ongoing for so long, right? And it just seems like the dam broke, if you will. But I think, like you said, it is. I think that we've seen a generational shift, because when I see Jonah, and I'm not going to speak about you, Jonah. We're going to speak with you. The professor and I will recognize we knew what we grew up with, but it seems like you have a completely different worldview. I mean, you jumped right into Israel apartheid state, but challenging Israel, but still loving Israel and saying, wait a minute, as you go forward, you've got to change. what is If Not Now saying? I mean, what do you want people to know about your thoughts about Israel as Jewish people, as Jewish Americans?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes there's a perception that those of us in If Not Now are motivated just by a hatred of Israel or a hatred of the people who live in Israel, and I think that is a misperception. In our movement, we have people that actually are Israeli American that have family or very close friends that were killed or taken hostage on October 7th. I have family in Israel, including a cousin who's currently a paramedic in the Israeli army. And my view is that this war is making her less safe.
Mm-hmm.
And not only for the cries of justice for the Palestinian people, which unfortunately have been made invisible or demonized to so much of the Jewish community, but for the liberation of the Jewish people of Israel, who have been told that the only way that they can be safe is by oppressing another people. I think what my generation has understood, and thankfully, with a generation removed from people like our parents, whose parents may have just come from the gas chambers in the Holocaust. I think there's been space for my generation to see that in order for the Jewish people to be safe, it doesn't require the oppression of another people, and it can't require the repression of another people, because that process dehumanizes us as Jews too. Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about first you, Jonah, and then you, Rachel, about Bernie Sanders? He's like moving by degrees, and I guess just as an African American and someone who's known Senator Sanders, oh please, since I was barely out of my teens, um, and I know him to be a good man and a man of tremendous principle. But we have wanted him to call for a ceasefire, which is something that he refuses to do. But he is also in his 80s. He's lived on the kibbutz. He's a generation from the Holocaust. I mean, he was born as it was ending. Do you give him any space on that? What do you think of his position, Jonah?
No, I totally hear what you're saying on that. And Senator Sanders has been a big friend of If Not Now for many years. And just this weekend came out with a very clear plan calling for conditions on U.S. military aid to Israel on things like ending the blockade, ending the building of settlements in the West Bank. And he said that Israel should not get another penny until things like that and the end of the indiscriminate bombing campaign in Gaza happen. And for that, If Not Now says, thank you so much, Senator Sanders. On the issue of ceasefire, I think, yeah, we're trying to figure out why he's in a different place than so much of the movement that elected him. Certainly, he has a history in Israel as well. He has a family that was killed in the Holocaust. What we've heard him say is that he doesn't see how you can have a ceasefire with a group like Hamas that is committed to the destruction of the state of Israel. And I think our view, and what we're trying to push him on, is to say that while certainly a group like Hamas is difficult to make peace with, its rise and the radicalization that leads people to support a group like Hamas must be understood in the context of the deprivation of human rights that the Palestinian people of Gaza have been experiencing, and that the way to defeat Hamas is by addressing those underlying conditions, that there is no military solution to Hamas. Not only that, but that attempts to defeat Hamas endanger Israeli hostages and endanger Palestinian civilians on a scale like we've never seen, on a scale that is an unfolding genocidal campaign in Gaza. And so we hope that Senator Sanders comes on board with us. And I think your guess is as good as mine as to why he's not all the way there yet.
Well, I see it again. I think generationally, and we all have. No one's perfect. We have our blind spots. But Rachel Ida Buff, you have not given him space. The last 2 minutes belong to you.
Sure. I mean, I think that Jonah is right that Sanders has moved this weekend. But even historically with Sanders, he's been better about this issue than he is being now. So I think that I don't all we're seeing. I mean, I know that we were talking, Jewish Voice of Peace in Wisconsin talked to Mark Pocan, who's congressman, who's been very courageous on this issue. And we talked about the issue of ceasefire. And he was like, look, I want to work with you. I've been working with JVP National on this. I think the word ceasefire is not going to get you what you think it is. So, you know, we still push them on ceasefire and we still stand for ceasefire. I mean, maybe there's a small percentage and ceasefire is less practical than the slightly more complex plan that Sanders laid out this weekend. But there's a moment at which, you know, ceasefire is also sort of like from the river to the sea. It's a condensation of people's desires for liberation, and the refusal of our representatives to sign on to it is really troubling to me. And I also want to say, and this, you know, to pick up on something Jonah was saying, Hamas is hard to negotiate with, and historically, the United States and Israel undermined every other legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. So it's really ahistorical to be like, oh, Hamas, they're terrible, we can't negotiate with them, we have to destroy everybody. Like, well, kind of all the other options were undermined, murdered, imprisoned, and taken out. So this is what you've got, you know, unfortunately. So, you know, Hamas is tricky. It's not maybe who people would like to be negotiating, but that's kind of life. It doesn't justify murdering everyone around Hamas and calling them human shields.
Well, you know, they did help to fund them, and George Soros did write a big letter supporting Hamas. We got to get behind them because they didn't want to deal with the Palestinians Liberation Organization. It's just like, and now look at what we've got. Unbelievable. Everybody, you know what? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it, and let's talk about the Global South's push, Rachel Idebuff and Jonah Karsh, against. They're pushing to take Israel to the ICC. Now, mind you, ICC, Israel's not part of it, but it's very interesting to watch the Global South assert themselves in this particular struggle. Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Call us at 773-763-9278. Back in a minute. Oh, D-Ray, goodness gracious, I've got to call and find out. I just have to confirm that. I'm not going to even say. Oh, girl, I've just got Rachel, Jonah Karsh. I've just got people passing around me. I've just gotten another message about a friend who passed. They're just like going home. Unbelievable. Oh, okay. Let me find out what's going on here. Let me find out what's going on. I gotta confirm. Oh, boy. Okay. Let me see if that happened. Okay. Okay. Oh, Jonah and Rachel, you still there? Hello?
Hello?
Oh, okay, just trying to make sure you're still there. I'm trying to see if this man passed last night. D-Ray, I don't want to make the announcement unless I don't want to say anything unless I know. So there it is. Let me find out, okay? So let me just find out. Oh, what is going on? Because I knew that D-Ray, I knew that he was gravely ill, but I don't want to make that announcement here unless that's been confirmed, okay? So thank you for that. but I knew that my brother was in Oklahoma about a week and a half ago, and Congressman Jackson, went to see him. Because he knew that he needed to. And there you have it. So, everybody. Well, you guys, I'm so glad, Miss Rachel, I'm glad that you're with us. And Jonah, I'm glad you're here too.
Well, thanks for having me.
Good to be here.
Pleasure.
Oh, look.
Yeah, indeed.
You know, what do they say?
Jonah, nice to...
Oh, well, please go on and say what you were going to say.
Just nice to meet you, Jonah, even though we haven't met actually formally.
Yeah, you as well.
Oh, you all going to have to come on to Chicago. You have to come on, get on out of Wisconsin. Oh, did I just say that? Come on to Chicago.
It's been known to happen.
Come on to Chicago, girl. So we have some fun here. That's right. And my
I belong to a temple in Chicago, so I do come down. I belong to a congregation there.
If you could please put me in touch with rabbis. I have a good news segment, and I'd like to have them give a word, but I'd also like to talk to them about the church's responsibility at this time. You know, many people don't realize Dr. King was cast out. We had the largest Black church organization in the country, the National Baptist Convention.
Sending Netfa Freeman, Attorney Patillo, Dwight McKee, and Dr. Gibbs through.
Rejected Dr. King when he stepped out in support, as a civil rights leader. And in fact, it caused a cleave in that organization. And you have the Progressive Baptist, which now has about 2.5 million members. Because they effectively threw Dr. King out of the organization. I mean, and it became like a really violent, awful struggle. And his father was one of the leading Black ministers in the country. I mean, his father and mother actually went to the Gone with the Wind premiere. Their church choir sang at the Gone with the Wind premiere. I mean, Daddy King was a huge preacher and had 5, 6, maybe even 10,000 members almost 100 years ago. Huge church, Ebenezer. And Dr. King absolutely went counterculture. And it caused a break in the biggest Black religious organization in the country. So what these rabbis are experiencing right now, I just wanted to share with you, is not unique. You know, when you have these...
It would be wonderful for you to have... is this the number that you called me from last night, Santita? Can I text that? Because I can give you Brent's contact.
Yes. And
good.
And you can share, and feel free to share my number, please. But I want to introduce you to these persons who I have with us today. I think you were on with Netfa Freeman yesterday from the Black Alliance for Peace. Attorney Robert Patillo, are you there?
I am. Good morning.
Oh, it's wonderful to hear you. He's from the national leadership team of Rainbow Push, but he's got a show that you all need to be on WAOK. Now, it's Buck Wild now. Just letting you know. Oh gosh, you get it all on his show, but I mean, it's one of the most popular shows in the country, and deservedly so. And he is brilliant political analyst. You'll see him all over the world analyzing. And we've got the brilliant Dwight McKee, brilliant sociologist. He's with the National Action Network, one of the founders of
60 seconds,
Push.
everyone.
Thank you so much. And I'm just really, and Dr. David Gibbs should be with us, another historian, brilliant, from the University of Arizona. It's good to have you all here this morning.
Good morning, thank you.
Stand by. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
Ten.
Thank you for that.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Monday, November 20th, 2023, Thanksgiving week, everybody. Praying that everyone you know and love are safe and sound. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Get on over there and meet Andre Parker, my god brother, and Robert and Wanda from North Carolina, Miss Waiters, and Shirley from, don't forget it, beautiful Philadelphia, and Laura Bell and Zenobia, and Robert and Barbara from Oak Park, always Daryl, sending you all so much love today, Barbara Bacon, that's right. I love you, love you, love you all, everybody. Meet on over there and please like and share the show. We are talking about the Global South and their push on this Palestinian question. They are going to take Israel to the International Criminal Court. What will that mean? What is Africa's position? What is the position of the former colonies, the formerly colonized countries, which are becoming economic superpowers in this new millennium? So I want you to call us at 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. Will South Africa's position move the needle on this question? Because, of course, not only do we need a ceasefire, we need peace, but you need the resolution of the Palestinian state. You need security for Israel. You need justice for the Palestinians, and they are locked into each other. So let's talk about it at 773-763-9278, dedicating the show to our forever First Lady, Rosalind Carter, 96 years of age, 77 years of marriage. Great humanitarian, great woman of God, made her transition yesterday. She was just put in hospice just days ago. And we thank God for her life. You know, when people live such great lives that are so full, you can't help but smile. We thank God for having had a first lady who stood for human rights, who stood for and with the most vulnerable. I thank God for her today and ask that peace be upon the Carter family. They have been blessed with so much. 4 children, scores of grandchildren, more than 14, I think 14 great grandchildren. What a life, what a life. And they continue to teach Sunday school. The Carter Center is now an epicenter for peace all around the world. What great people the Carters are. And Jimmy Carter said, the best thing I ever did in my life was marry Rosalind Carter. She has been his guiding light, and we thank God for her today. God bless you, Rosalind Carter. Sending much love and many prayers to Carlton Pearson. Bishop Pearson has been struggling with his health. We're sending him love today, trying to check on him and find out just how he's doing today. Sending him so much love today, that wonderful family. It is Monday, November 20th, 2023 in Chicago. We're going to have a high of 49 degrees. It'll be cloudy, a chance of rain. It will rain in Minneapolis, St. Paul, though. 45 degrees will be the high, and it will be cloudy all day. In the NFL, well, the Broncos 21, the Vikings 20 in a heartbreaker. And, well, the Bears, well, the Lions 31 and the Bears 26. In the NBA, the Heat will be playing the Bulls tonight, and the Knicks will be playing the Timberwolves. And in NHL, yes, it's that time, everybody. The Sabres 3, Chicago 2, the Maple Leafs 4, and Minnesota 3. The California Democratic Convention was shut down by ceasefire supporters. And there are more than 13,000 Palestinians who have been killed since October 7th. Wow, including a 32-member family, 19 of whom were children, all killed by these IDF strikes. Indeed, the deputy Knesset speaker of the Israeli parliament, Nassim Vatari, said, "We are too humane. Burn Gaza now." Wow. How do we get from there to where we're supposed to be? We're going to do it. We're talking today about the push by the Global South to have a ceasefire, and not just have a ceasefire. They are saying, you know what? You've got to resolve the Palestinian question, and you must take Israel to the ICC for war crimes. So let's talk about this today. Of course, we are still talking with two members of If Not Now, Rachel Ida Buff. She's a professor of history at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. Of course, she's also with Jewish Voice for Peace and Never Again, Wisconsin. Of course, Jonah Karsh, jazz pianist. We're going to have to do something together one day, Jonah. And he's a political lead at If Not Now Chicago. And of course, we're joined by Dwight McKee, a brilliant sociologist, and the dean of the Ma'afa Redemption Project, Dr. David Gibbs, professor of history at the University of Arizona, Netfa Freeman, Black Alliance for Peace, and attorney Robert Patillo from the national leadership team of Rainbow Push, coming off his show on the iconic WAOK in Atlanta. Robert, what do you make of the South Africans' push to take Israel to court over war crimes?
Well, let's remember that South Africa has more experience with dealing with an apartheid regime than almost any other nation in modern history. And as you said, we're seeing a place now where nations in the global South are saying we just dealt with colonization. We know what colonization looks like, and we have to fight back against colonization. We're seeing similar things happen in South American nations, from Colombia to Venezuela, all breaking diplomatic ties with Israel over their genocide currently taking place in Gaza. And I remind people often on my radio show and other places that this is the moderate position that the Israelis are taking based upon how Netanyahu ran in the past campaign. If you look at the far right-wing government that he put in place, if you look at the judicial reforms that were put in place, if you look at every statement Netanyahu made over the course of the last 2 years or so, he stated that his goal was the complete destruction and occupation of Gaza and the seventh attack of the Cassius Belli that he needed in order to justify that attack. We've had members of the Israeli parliament or the Israeli government talk about dropping atomic bombs.
Hold on 1 second. We can hear. Wait. Hold on 1 second. We can hear something in the background. So if you could mute yourself so that we can hear Robert. Okay, Robert Patillo.
Thank you so much. But we've heard members of the Israeli leaders who talk about nuking Gaza, discussing this idea of the complete destruction. Even U.S. politicians who are aligned with Israel have talked about the need for the complete ethnic cleansing of the region. So for people in the global South, from South Africa and other nations who have dealt with this in recent years, there has to be some sort of international protocol in place, or else the entire international order starts falling apart. When it simply, we have rules for war, but it comes to other nations, to black and brown nations, but when it get Iraqis, we can kill 750,000 Afghanis. We can launch wars and drone attacks against whoever we want. International laws, international lines do not matter to us. Well, then it becomes the place where these other nations have to say, well, they don't have to play by the same rules as us. How do the rules apply at all? And I think we're seeing the global South start to band together because the growth of the next century is in the global South. The average age of the sub-Saharan Africa is between 19 and 22 years old. The second half of this century will be the African century and the South American century. So we're going to need to put the apparatuses in place right now to maintain the global order as it stands today. Otherwise, the global North will become left behind. Look at birth rates, look at rates of industrialization, look at the graying and aging populations. The global South is rising, the global North is falling, and Israel is desperately trying to hold on to the last of this 18th century style colonization that we're seeing in Gaza.
Netfa Freeman, your thoughts? Do you think that the global South will move the needle on this issue?
Well, I think it's a good beginning, and it needs to happen. I agree with everything the previous panelist was suggesting. The global South is moving the needle in a lot of ways. I think one of the things that's important to note is the multipolarization that's emerging in the world, where the United States and the Western powers are not able to exercise a complete unfettered hegemony over the world. Israel should be seen as an extension of their interest and their power, particularly military power, in that region. That's really the purpose of the founding of it. One of the things that I think is interesting to me that I came across was a suggestion by Craig Murray, who's a human rights activist, and he actually was the British ambassador, had been the British ambassador to Uzbekistan. He's suggesting that activating the Genocide Convention through the International Court of Justice, instead of the International Criminal Court, he's saying that to do so there, and this is very interesting, actually prevents having to the International Criminal Court would have to go through an investigation to determine if it's, and also will do it down to the individual, where in the International Court of Justice, any of the governments that's a party to that, and it's 149 states that are party to the Genocide Convention, are able to introduce this. And as soon as one of the states, requires adjudication, as soon as one of the states disputes the claim, and that would be United States or Israel and the United Kingdom, which are all party to this convention, and this would prevent or eliminate the need for the International Criminal Court to actually go into something. And then there's also the International Criminal Court is very much a Western government puppet institution, and there's a lot of times it's wiggled out of taking action on these kind of things. But the International Court of Justice of genocide and is actually more respected and is also a part of the United Nations. We should note that Israel has been ignoring a UN Security Council resolution that was passed about almost a week ago, calling for humanitarian pause that would allow for aid and everything. And they just basically ignored this. So we're talking about the imperial powers wielding whatever they can to just go ahead with their agenda. This is kind of what they do. They've always did this. They have a history of just doing this and ignoring the rest of the world. So it is important for the global South to buckle down in terms of efforts to bring into, to get control of the craze and nature of the Western powers.
I mean, Dr. Gibbs, what does this say about the global South? I mean, really making this kind of decision and pushing forward with this.
Well, I don't know about the legality of it. I'm uncertain about the legality, just because, to the best of my knowledge, Israel had never joined the International Criminal Court, so it's unclear to me whether jurisdiction would apply or not. Again, I haven't studied this carefully, but I'm uncertain about how legally applicable it is. I mean, certainly in terms of what Israel's doing, it's so worthy of condemnation that if they can get any kind of case before the ICC, that would certainly be a worthy activity. What you're seeing here is indeed a growth in confidence in the global South, joined by some very powerful nations such as India, Brazil, of course, China, South Africa, potentially Nigeria, Egypt. These are countries that will have some weight, increasing weight in the world. I think that the United States itself is very much in a kind of NATO bubble, and they imagine that the world is united around American policy. They said this again and again, during the Ukraine war, for example, and that really was only less than 20% of the world's population. And somehow or another, they imagine that Europe, the United States, and a couple of American allies in Japan, that's the world. The world is a lot bigger than that, and it's beginning, the non-U.S. allies are starting to break away from U.S. leadership and to challenge U.S. leadership at many levels. The ICC case is only one. Obviously, you are getting efforts to build up a new economic order that is not based on U.S. dollars. We're getting a kind of very gradual de-dollarization, where countries increasingly are not using the dollar for international trade and increasingly will not use the dollar for international trade. This is very clearly a challenge to hegemony of the existing order. And it's been accelerated by the brutality of what Israel is doing in Gaza with very strong American backing. And so this could very well be kind of an inflection point in the history of international relations. one that really marks the decline of American hegemony and NATO, and moving to a different system.
Dwight McKee, what's your take on this?
Well, it's interesting that most of those countries have one thing in common, and all of them have been captivated in one way or another by the British Empire. In South Africa, whether it's India, by England, whether it's China and Taiwan, and their annexation of Taiwan, whether it's South Africa being set up by the Boers, most of these countries have that in common, including Israel, which was actually set up by the British Empire. And the other thing that South Africa and Israel have in common is that the commonality of the Rothschilds, who set the apostasy system up in both those countries, South Africa and Israel, and funded the beginning of Israel and controlled, many of the resources in South Africa. And so there's a continuity and a sensitivity that these countries have for what's happening in Israel. The other problem they have, though, is that most of the courts that you would appeal to for genocide, they were always also set up by the British Empire and indirectly America. And so they exercise veto power. And so they play games when it comes to genocide. So in order for you to be tried for genocide, by and large, as Rob used to say, you have to be a African president. You have to be a black tyrant or a tyrant of color. But if you are a white tyrant or one who identifies with the West, then you pretty much have carte blanche to be as brutal as you need to be for the sake of extending Western colonialism. And so I think that the best way, as opposed to go through the courts, is pretty much what Brother Gibbs was saying, is use your collective power of trade and controlling those resources to begin to boycott and sanction trade with the United States and Israel and England, because they are most dependent upon those resources in the South. And the economies are really built around having access to the natural resources in the southern countries. And so if you take them off the market, and if you take yourself off of the dollar and begin to negotiate everything from oil to titanium in different currencies that are not U.S. dollars, then they can then begin, United States and Israel and this Britain begin to feel the brunt of those countries and their anger about what's going on, and is more subject to being able to make adjustments, because now they're feeling it at a different level than at the court level. The court thing never worked.
No, I'm sorry, Dwight. You were saying your thought?
The court thing never works because those countries have veto power. And so when you look at the reality of even those Americans who have been condemned as war criminals like Kissinger, they never get tried because, these Western countries really protect the American violators of these policies.
But you know what, Jonah, it seems like things are changing. I know you've got to go, but I have a couple of minutes that I want to give to you because you're of another generation, Rachel Ida-Buff. And so Rachel's going to stay with us for a while, but now the global South, they're asserting themselves, as Dr. Gibbs said, in a way that we have not seen before. But they also, they know that they're not debtors. They're actually creditors, because the West wealth is by and large predicated upon their resources. So what do you make of this? I mean, in this new day, because I do believe a new day has dawned, Jonah Karsh. Last 2 minutes belong to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that with the U.S. exercising hegemony over the global order and the two great powers of the world at this time sort of being understood as the U.S. and China, if the U.S. is abdicating its moral leadership as sort of the patron state to Israel and not holding Israel accountable, it makes sense that countries that are victims of British colonialism, that are victims of U.S. in the global South, that are going to stand up and say, as by the way, the State Department has been warning, and apparently the Secretary of State is not listening, that these countries are going to say, if the U.S. isn't going to exercise leadership here, we're going to take this into our own hands and use every tool at our disposal to say that what Israel is doing is not acceptable. And that our legacy of colonialism informs the way that we understand it. And so I think the U.S. would do well to listen. And I'm encouraged by movements in the United States that are working to understand that when we have an open discourse on this issue, things are better because bodies like AIPAC are invested in keeping the discourse closed, of only showing part of the truth, of taking members of Congress to Israel, and they can come back and say that they understand what's going on, but they didn't visit a single village in the West Bank that's under occupation. They didn't talk to a single Palestinian who understands himself as oppressed, who's not corrupt and in the pocket of Israel. And so I hope that as the open discourse continues, both encouraged by these countries in the international community and by the movements in the United States, that we can see some change in Israel and Palestine.
Well, I think our economic circumstances are going to determine that too, because they're organizing around BRICS. I mean, the American dollar is no longer going to be the reserve currency of the world. Indeed, it's increasingly it is not. It's something we need to think about. Jonah Karsh, you have a home here on this show. I want you to come back as soon as you can. I've got about 30 seconds. What else will If Not Now be doing? How can we be active with you? How can we support you?
Absolutely. Well, If Not Now, Chicago's current focus is getting to a ceasefire as soon as possible, because as long as this war is going on, we can't begin to address the underlying causes of occupation and apartheid that got us here in the first place. So you can follow us on Instagram at If Not Now Chicago, and nationally at ifnotnow.org to get updates on all the things that we have planned. We have for our membership an opportunity tomorrow night to talk about how you're going to talk to your family on Thanksgiving about this issue, because this is such an issue that divides the Jewish community. But just follow us on Instagram at If Not Now Chicago, and we'll have lots of updates coming in the coming weeks.
Jonah Karsh, everybody, jazz pianist, also a great political organizer and activist. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. All right, everybody. And is David still there, Devin?
No, caller David dropped.
Okay. All right, everybody, call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to hear what your thoughts are. I wish David would call back, because David does not agree with the ceasefire. How about that? I wanted to get him on. So there's that. So do you think we're going to get, what's the difference between a ceasefire and a humanitarian pause? Can anyone tell me?
I can tell you that a ceasefire is a more enduring event that's supposed to basically, end fighting indefinitely pending a political solution. It, anticipates the ending of fighting, full ending of fighting. Whereas a humanitarian pause is just that. It's a few hours, maybe a couple of days, but with a clear understanding that combat will resume in a short period of time. So they're fundamentally different. The humanitarian pause is mostly cosmetic, I would say. Mm-hmm. It's something the United States has been pushing periodically. under pressure because the United States is looking very bad and the image is looking bad and Biden himself is looking bad in the Democratic Party. And so, this is a way basically of trying to, propitiate critics without really having any fundamental effect on what Israel is doing.
I guess like armistice as opposed to an armistice agreement as opposed to a peace treaty, like what we have with Korea.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that,
yeah.
More or less.
Okay. I think the humanitarian clause is even more trivial in the sense that it doesn't really change anything fundamentally. It is mostly just public relations, I would say.
Ridiculous. We've got 13,000 people who've been killed since October 7th, minus the people in the rubble. I mean, this is horrible.
Right.
Yeah,
yes, it is horrible.
It's horrific. And it makes me think about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, everybody. Robert Patillo, Dwight McKee, Dr. Gibbs, Rachel, and Netfa. Dr. King had to start with nonviolence because he knew how damaged Black people were. And, Bayard Rustin often said that, that was the genius and the divinity of Dr. King, that he really had a spiritual approach to this dilemma because, Black people, he moved us into wanting justice. And that didn't just, he reinforced our need for justice and not this thirst for revenge. And that is my prayer that will happen in the Middle East because it can happen. What the hurt that happens to you people inflict upon each other. We do it individually, we do it collectively. I'm not excusing anyone. I'm just saying it's just part of the human thing, Rachel and everybody. I mean, that's what we do. And but it's got to end. Phyllis Bennis from the Institute for Policy Studies said, you've got to have a ceasefire, period. Everybody's got to stop shooting. I mean,
60 seconds, everyone.
That's what police do when they walk into a situation. They say, stop. I don't care who started what, who's the guilty party here, stop. Everybody stop. And it's got to stop. But you're wiping out whole families. And all you're doing is increasing the anger and the hurt and the pain. Boy, oh boy, this is just, it's awful. It's awful, just awful. Oh, so there we go. But everybody, I can hear something in the background. So make sure if you have to do something in the background, put yourself on mute. Rachel, I'm going to come to you to respond to what you've heard. And to respond to David, who's against the idea of
10 seconds.
Ceasefire. Stand by, everybody. Oh.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Of course, we're talking about peace in the Middle East, and peace in your heart, peace in your home. Call us at 773-763-9278. David, I wish you would call back because you said that I don't want to put words into your mouth, but the synopsis that I got of your remarks is that you are against a ceasefire, and I'd certainly like to know why. And just no judgment, just want to know what your thinking is. And Rachel Ida Buff, you're a professor of history at the University of Wisconsin. You're with Jewish Voice for Peace, with Never Again Action. You're with If Not Now. When you hear that someone says that they don't support a ceasefire, chief among them, trying to move Bernie Sanders into that column has been very, very difficult. What do you say? What do you think they're seeing? I mean, where do you think that they might not have it right?
Well, I think we saw the mobilization of mostly American Jews, so there were a number of Christian Zionists there last week in D.C. calling for more military action, calling for the punishment of Hamas. And I think you just said it in the break, hurt people hurt people. We're all grieving. Many American Jews have relatives in Israel. I was at a benefit the other night and was speaking to a young Palestinian woman, a graduate student, and she told me that day 50 of her family members had died in Gaza. And I think we're just all wrecked. And I think the sort of intransigence about peace, we often run into this, right? That we have to pay back. We're not, we have to pay back to people who hurt us. And, the other piece of it is there's this kind of colonialist, racist overlay that you can't negotiate with Hamas. They're terrorists. And we know.
No, they're human animals. Wait.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you, as a black person, when I hear that, I'm feeling some kind of way. When you casually refer to people, when you animalize people, we were 3/5 human. That made us animals. And, you lose me on that, quite frankly.
Yep, exactly. And once you're talking about a group of people in that way, you convince yourself that there is no way you could have peace. You can't negotiate with them. You can't do a hostage exchange with them. You can't, for example, Israel could open its jails and let, just the children out, right? And get the hostages back. But no, we have to double down. Right. And, I think people, I can't speak for David who called in, but I know that among many American Jews, the notion is it's too dangerous. Peace is too dangerous. And, that's a very sad position to be in. And it's a very colonialist position. And as you're pointing out, it is propped up only by extinctionist, genocidal racism.
Well, Netfa, where do we go from here? What do we do? If you've got a progressive stalwart like Bernie Sanders who is being moved grudgingly. He's not at ceasefire yet. And he said, you can't have ceasefire with Hamas. If you could speak to him one-on-one, what would you say?
I put little into what Bernie Sanders can do or anything about Bernie Sanders. Really, I'm not really a fan. There's really nothing that he's really done that's impressive to me. I'll be quite honest.
Well, but give us that. That's fine because you can feel whatever you feel and see whatever you see. I want you to share that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we should, as particularly as those who are the non-white world, the population in the United States, should see ourselves as part of the global South because we did start talking about it from that standpoint. The U.S. really should be, and if we're talking about criminal court, and I do agree with the other panels actually about the courts really not being. It may be just one aspect of a strategy. We have to cover all bases if we can, I suppose, but that's something at the level of the states that those of us who are not within governments don't really have much to do with. But we should see the United States as co-conspirators with Israel, not just people who are not doing, the government, not doing what they can to do things, but actually aiding and abetting genocide. There's special forces on the ground. They've, sent the aircraft carriers, all that over there. There's unconditional support when they're talking in the media and everything for this Zionist state of Israel. So, and those of us inside the United States should see ourselves because the role as colonized people, as the people who don't benefit from the interest of those who are, who exploit our labor and send police into our neighborhoods and all that. And we have the same adversaries as the Palestinian people. They're the police, the controllers also trained together with the idea of this is a very important thing for us to understand. And that the global South, the movement of the global South, which I think we should say we were part of, I think we established that it's emerging. This is what needs to be done is that we have to keep fighting for our liberation. Liberation is this is a liberation struggle. Which means when people start talking about Hamas and all these things, we're not talking about any response by the Palestinian people. And it may happen to include violence. We have to consider it in the realm of self-defense. Colonized people don't just commit acts of revenge violence. A lot of it is about fighting liberation.
Getting some music, but that's okay. Keep on going.
I have to mute him to figure out who it is.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Netfa, please continue. Oh, Was Netfa, are you still there?
I'm trying to find the music.
Okay, well, hold on. We're trying to find where the music was coming from. But
Okay, here, it was Attorney Patillo.
Okay, Netfa.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, now I can. But you were
Yeah.
making the point
Okay.
that blacks ought to see themselves as a part of the global South and that movement, which is,
Right.
which is an historical position that our leadership have taken, my goodness, for centuries.
Right. And so what needs to be done is that we have to continue in the liberation struggle. We have to double down on our solidarity with the Palestinian people and politically educate the masses of our people, that those of us, especially the African and black population, that says it has nothing to do with us. When we identify as a global South, and particularly as those of us, I'm a Pan-Africanist, so we also see our situation as tied to the situation of black and African people around the world. And then we see that they have the same, that there's also a long history of solidarity and struggle between those on the continent of Africa and other places and the Palestinian people, and that the same interests, the same forces, not just that oppress Palestinian people, are at the heart of oppressing us. In the Congo, the diamonds and all the extractive industries, the super exploitation of Africa in terms of these extractive things, Israel's complicit in that. The military exchanges of weapons and things like that. Israel is the biggest supplier or exporter of diamonds around the world, but there's not a single diamond mine in, well, I should say, Palestine. And that's because of the relationship with places like South Africa and the Congo, where these things are coming. So there's a direct relationship that we have with the liberation struggle, and we have to continue in the liberation struggle that discredits and delegitimizes and shifts power from those who benefit, that are at the top, to the masses of the people. One of the things that was interesting is Israel's working its way, because of the pro-Palestinian movement, anti-Zionist movement during the liberation struggle, the independence struggles and decolonization in Africa. Since since 1973 and onward, they've been trying to work their way to the point where they actually have observer status in the African Union.
Unbelievable.
And that's been right.
Unbelievable.
But it's been contested. Now that it's being contested, now an emergence of contesting that, because of the continent of Africa is being shaken up from the ground up in terms of its relationship with neocolonialism. So there's a lot there that we need to understand the commonalities, but it also gives us a roadmap on some level of what should be done.
Well, I guess on that level, the spirit of Gaddafi does live, because he was, was really, in terms of his politics, he was the blackest leader in Africa. And so when he was taken out, it was devastating. But, you can take out a person. And he knew that he was going to be taken out. He said, unfortunately, it's going to happen during the Obama administration. And he lamented that publicly. And you remember when the president of South Africa flew up and apologized to him after President Obama asked him to flip his vote so that they would invade Libya. Oh, my gosh. I mean, just the heartbreak of all of that. And yet you see Africa kind of getting back on its feet and kind of getting its balance back. Yes, Netfa.
Well, yes. I mean, just that point about Libya, because you're right that the Libyan Jamhuriya, led by Gaddafi, was one of the staunchest anti-Zionist countries on the continent. But then we saw the U.S. leading, and the NATO leading, the destruction of Libya in 2011, and having to recover back from that, and that also causing a lot of the militarized destabilization we see across the Sahel, and the things that the AFRICOM is claiming they're trying to fight, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, and all that. But actually, the United States operation to destroy Libya is directly responsible for this destabilization. It's all tied together.
Let me go to Tony from the South Side. Tony, what's on your mind today? Thank you for calling in.
Oh, okay. Peace and blessings and happy holidays to you and all of y'all loved ones.
And to yours.
Thank you. On the air, in the media, they're talking about who's the Oscar Nazi, or the people that come out of Europe that the present day Zionists. How can they be? They are less Semitic than the Palestinians are. So what have they hijacked being called Semites? Those people are not really Semites. And then Bernie Sanders, I'm really disappointed in him. He made a very foolish statement. It's not a war with Hamas like they're saying in the media. It's a war on the Palestinian people. I understand the rage of Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. It's a shame, and I'm disappointed in Hakeem Jeffries also. I don't know how Dr. Leonard Jeffries feels about it, but it's ridiculous. But peace, that's what we need. People are getting killed. It's sickening.
They're wiping out entire families. Entire families.
Wow.
I mean, Robert Patillo. I mean, whole families are being wiped out. But the rage and the pain is behind Mr. Tony. It remains.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm feeling. Because I know how our people, I don't trust what this media is saying to people. As a matter of fact, the biggest gangsters and corporations are the weapon manufacturers. And they destroy everything, then come back, and Halliburton and everybody else build it back up. It's like some kind of racket, a vicious racket. And I'm praying to the Creator for me not to lose my faith or my belief in him or her. Because I'm saying the most of the devastating trauma and hardship is being rained upon the people with the least resources, the least of us. And I'm saying, Creator, where are you? What you gonna do?
Well, I will tell.
Okay, that's enough for me.
No, that's okay. I believe God is here and God is ever present, but God needs us to be present. And we continue we pray and then we do nothing. And faith without works is dead. What are we going to do? When are we going to fight for peace? When are we going to fight to make things right? Because at some point, because we do a lot of talking, but people are not willing to pay the price to fight for peace, to be targeted by your government, to be called a dissident and mistreated. I mean, I know because I come from that space, and to have to live with it. Because people who have pushed for justice for the Palestinians and Israeli security have paid a high price. And most people, even if they knew that what was happening to Palestinian people was wrong, they weren't willing to pay the price. So you kind of, not you, but people miss me on that. Because folks do a lot of talking, but they don't want to pay the price for peace.
Yeah, like I understand what Reverend Al Sharpton said. He said, God is not your valet.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
I understand. I appreciate you and your family. I was kind of disappointed last week when they said you weren't going to be in there, because I really look forward to hearing your insight and the outstanding panel that you be bringing before us. We need to hear that. People all over the world need to hear the viewpoint of Attorney Mark Fancher, Attorney Robert Tillo, Dwight McKee, Attorney Todd Yeary, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Attorney Darrell Jones, Aaron Connolly, and Dr. David Gibbs, and Bryce Green, and I'm with Dr. John Quigley. I believe him.
Well, now, my goodness, everybody here, see, Rachel, I told you need to join us, girl. He knows the whole lineup. So Rachel Ideboff, why don't you respond to all that Mr. Tony said? Because you can hear the despair. I mean, this is not something that people are just feeling in that part of the world. We're feeling it here. We do actually have boots on the ground over there. We're just not putting them on the ground.
TV. We have guns. Yeah, boots on the ground, guns in the hands, and as a couple of people pointed out, the weapons manufacturers very, very happy, as they have been, it should be said, with the Ukraine war. There are people who never do badly, and we don't talk about them enough. There are people who benefit from the death and loss and grief, and they're right here among us, and they're on the boards of our corporations. I think that it was Dr. McKee who talked about the necessity of boycott, and we have seen a vicious pushback on the enactment of the civil call in Palestine for boycott, divest, and sanction. There have been laws, there has been demonization. When you were just speaking to Mr. Tony about the cost of standing up for peace, we've seen people lose their jobs. We've seen particularly Muslim people targeted for, again, the thought crime of supporting BDS, which is a boycott, like the Montgomery bus boycott. It's a freedom of speech issue. It is covered in the Constitution, but it is now being demonized because it's an effective way of saying to Israel, we don't want you to profit from what you're doing. We're not going to support the apartheid state. We're defecting with our money, and it's very powerful, in some Western European countries, the BDS movement, but it's demonized again under this kind of Cold War fear of dissent in this country. And it's what Palestinian civil society in Palestine has called for. It's what activists, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, secular, have called for in this country, and it is a response to the people who never lose anything from war, that wreak havoc and death on the rest of the world, mostly people of color, right? And, saying you can't profit from this anymore is really a powerful thing, but it is being demonized. And so I share Mr. Tony's despair, and honestly, what makes me an organizer is, this is at a very basic level, particularly since October 7th, the only time I don't feel just paralyzed by grief and fear is when I'm organizing with, the beautiful coalition we have up here in Wisconsin, which is multiracial, multi-religious, it's multi-ideological, or, down in Chicago last week, a week ago today. Those are the only moments I don't feel just immobilized and horrified, and I think that there's something about coming out of your individualized space of despair into fellowship and solidarity. Like, we don't always win, we don't always prevail, but we represent, and I think incredibly brave work of people who do suffer for peace makes it possible for other people to consider taking those first steps.
Robert Patillo, dissent on this particular issue is not new. That's been the rule, as opposed to the exception. What changed?
I think that what's changed is our media landscape, that instead of media being controlled by CNN and ABC, et cetera, and only getting their side of the discussion out, now we're starting to see the democratization of information through social media. Now we're seeing firsthand the images coming out of Palestine. We're seeing children being blown up. And when the IDF says, well, we were targeting a terrorist Hamas leader, we see the video of what really happened, that it's a school bus, or that it's a group of old people being wheeled out of a hospital. We're seeing the real images come out, and that is what's changing people's opinion. For generations, all we have heard is the Israeli side of the argument because they have an outsized level of control on U.S. media. That's just a truthful statement. That's just a realistic statement. When it comes to, when you look at the lobbying efforts, if you look at the power of AIPAC on our political system, if you look at the number of members of Congress who have dual citizenship with the United States and Israel, if you look at the joint drills that are done between the U.S. military and the Israeli military, there's an outsized influence in American media and politics. And now that we're seeing the other side of the story, it's becoming very difficult for people to stomach what is being done in their names and what's being done with their tax dollars. You're seeing people like Cardi B come out and say, how are we fighting a two-front war, or funding a two-front war while there are people starving in the streets? We're seeing folks for the first time really understand on an international level what the American empire is built on top of. That it's an empire that is built on top of the bones of dissidents from around the world. And then until we come to a reckoning on this, we do not have the moral high ground or authority to tell anyone else what they can and cannot do. How exactly can America tell Israel to stop killing Hamas? Well, we spent 20 years killing people in Afghanistan after 9/11. We have to start rebuilding our moral authority around the world, and that starts with demanding a ceasefire. And we need to condition any U.S. aid to Israel on the founding of a two-state solution. Why? Well, since 1947, America has given Israel nearly $300 billion in military and humanitarian aid. We need to have a say in how that money is spent. And if we're not going to do so, we are complicit in all their war crimes.
And, and we need that money in the United States. You would think that if you were driving down the street, that we had streets paved with gold and that the infrastructure of America was where it's supposed to be. The American Society of Civil Engineers, they routinely give us a D or C minus. We need that money here. And you can't take my money and just do with it what you will, and I have no say in it. That's not going to work. And I think that's going to turn. But what we want to do is not turn on each other. We want to turn to each other and move from the hurt. The Bible tells you that you're supposed to do unto others as you're supposed to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The sad thing is we do unto others what has been done unto us. We've got to grow beyond that, everybody. My great-grandmama Tippy was not a woman of letters, but God knows she was wise. She said, baby, remember this. She didn't like revenge. She hated that. She didn't like it. And she told us, no, that's not what you want. You want justice. You want to do right by people and have them do right by you. That's enough. As long as the hurt that happens in you does not happen, you don't do it to somebody else, then you're all right. Don't let when people spoil you and hurt you, don't let that hurt you. Don't turn that around. And so that is my prayer for the Palestinian people, because that is something that I want our Jewish brothers and sisters to get. Not revenge, but justice. And the pain that has happened to them, I want them to stop inflicting it on others. And I hope that when the Palestinians come out of this into justice, and they will have that they will not inflict this pain upon anyone else. It's part of the human story. We've got to stop it. Ceasefire now. Love everybody. God bless. Dr. Gibbs, what was left on the table? What do you want people to know? And what should we be looking out for? Because it seems that just the escalation has occurred. I mean, more than 13,000 Palestinians have been killed. I mean, they're dropping bombs on hospitals. They have fewer and fewer hospitals over in Gaza. I mean, this is unbelievable. And they keep bombing Jabalia. I mean, what is that? Dr. Gibbs, are you there? Okay.
Sorry, I was unmuted. I'm muted. Yeah, in the short term, I think clearly what we need is a ceasefire and an end to the Israeli military operation. That's what we need immediately. In the longer term, I think we as Americans need to ask, what is our role in this process? How have we enabled this conflict, this horrific killing that is going on here? And how have we done so over time? And we need to ask ourselves, why is the United States subsidizing, to an extraordinary degree, Israel's military operations? Why have we been doing it over the last half century? And we really need to have, first of all, we need an open debate on that, which we have not had. One of the reasons you're getting all this vilification of, anybody who speaks out, whether Jewish or not Jewish, on this issue, one of the reasons you're getting that is to prevent a debate, a proper debate. We need a proper debate on this issue. We need to discuss the fact that the United States has been regularly giving $3 to $4 billion a year to Israel for half a century, now increased considerably during this war. And we as Americans need to ask, what is our policy and our role in this? We need to basically end that subsidy, is what we need to do. And I think that should be the top priority for American peace activists after a ceasefire. I mean, first comes a ceasefire, but after that, the question is American enabling of Israel to engage in these types of activities. That needs to stop.
Netfa, your thoughts?
Well, yes. Well, history is important, too, for us to also understand who we are. I mean, one thing is that we can't discount the fact that Israel and the United States are the same, along with the apartheid governments and settler colonial governments in Southern Africa, Australia, wherever New Zealand, wherever we are. And so some people's relationship is we have to see that there is a history and a extension of European dominance and colonization it comes out of that legacy, and Israel is no different than that. And that part also would explain stuff because, and also we have a responsibility to do it also just because of out of respect for the indigenous peoples in these different places, particularly here. I mean, where it's not the only thing because we know that Israel serves a purpose. Like Dr. Gibbs, there's answers to those questions that he's alluding to answering the questions, like, for example, the role that Israel plays for the U.S. agenda toward Iran or Syria or different places and for, in that region, different things like that. And then what I mentioned in Africa. So there's reasons why the United States supports it, just like, and some of them I'm suggesting also go back to the legacy and the role that the U.S., EU, NATO axis domination plays in their history of colonization. Settler colonial governments being, and people, I think it would also help for us to have political education, to mass political education. It's also helped contribute to this moment now, incrementally and after a while. But settler colonialism being, these settlers coming from the Western European countries and then deciding to have their own independent sovereign state and at the expense of the indigenous people that also accompanies it is a genocide. And so what Israel is looking at is that, the success, they're looking at places like the U.S. as a model for what they have done and what they're trying to do now. And so I think this is very important, if we're going to identify. And then we have to make a delineation between those who I think it's important for the people to understand they don't reap the same benefits from those who are exercising, implementing the policies of colonization and war and destruction and exploitation of resources and labor. We actually are exploited by these things. We're subject to them. I think it's important for the people to understand that.
Well, and I don't know why Dr. Gibbs, Dwight, Rachel, Robert, I don't know why this $500 billion gas discovery that's off the coast of Gaza. No one talks about it. Everyone just says, kumbaya, Muslims, Jews, and Christians coming together. I'm like, wait, y'all, hold on. This is a political fight. This is about land and resources. Israel is still making money off that gas, off Gaza. And no one wants to talk about that. That was a deal that they squeezed the Palestinians out. Britain and Israel, it's the same old players. No one wants to look at this in economic and business terms. This is a political fight. At the end of the day, people, really, first of all, walking down the street in the United States, Rachel and Dr. Gibbs and Dwight and Robert, I don't know who's Jewish. I don't know who's just white. Okay, because that ain't, unless you're coming out of temple or something. I don't know that. See, the only readily identifiable other is a black person. I'm the only one who can't pass into whiteness. Everybody else can, and they do. This is money. This is economics. This is why France has a certain position on this, because they were Israel's closest allies before we were. This is why everybody's got a certain position, because they're getting all this, they're getting the resources from the region. That's why they want to raise Gaza, to get those people out so that they can control the maritime rights, which is where the gas is. Why aren't we talking about that? Anybody?
Well,
Robert, anybody?
I just got finished talking, but colonization, everything you said is what colonization gets. It's a business. These are business ventures. And I think one of we're talking about it, I would like to say, and all the other people there's people talking about the emergence, but those, the media can't. Because their role, not the media, I want to make a distinction between what the brother outlined in terms of social media and other alternative media and the corporate stuff like CNN and all them. They can't because they serve as a propaganda arm for these interests, they're actually corporations themselves. So they benefit off of capitalism and hyper-exploitation and keeping the narrative, control of the narrative. So they can't talk about it in these terms. Their role is to confuse people, while ours is to unravel the confusion.
Well, I mean, all they're doing is
Well, we
increasing the
also
hurt,
need to
right?
what we also need to understand is that Plymouth was a trading company. It wasn't a rock. It was a trading company. Virginia, the colonial invaders, they were all trading companies. East Indian was a trading company.
That's right.
And so the country is set up by these trading companies. And the goal of these trading companies was to control the resources of every country that they invaded. So they came in with a flag and an army and took over the resources. And that is the American way. What we have to do is understand and get past the mythology of what these countries are. They're not countries that were looking for religious liberty and freedom and independence. They were people who worked for companies that paid them to exploit the labor out of the countries that they invaded. And once you understand that as a premise, that's correct. And once you understand it as a premise, then you know how to present yourself. So then, when we deal with the Democratic National Committee, when we deal with the Democratic or Republican politics, we force them not to be a party, an anti-Trump party. We force them to be a party of justice. And we put our demands on the table in the context of what those parties are set up to do. We then, APEC said that they won't target anybody in Congress. They put $100 million aside and said they won't target anybody who was against Israel. Well, they're only 2% of the population. They got 20% of the money, but they're 2% of the population. We have 15-20% of the population. We have to target our people to say, if you don't support justice and peace, then you're going to be out of office, Hakeem, Black Caucus. You can't take their party line and fight against the interest of people who are colonized all over the world, who are also our brothers in this exercise of exploitation. We demand that you are going to be politicians who are working in behalf of the common people and exploited people, and not in behalf of these corporations that's paying you. And ultimately, when we sit down and negotiate, we also know what to negotiate. And so every election, if the Democrats walk away, the Republicans walk away, that one group does not walk away with the Treasury Department every year and the State Department every year. The same people that are making these policies, as part of the negotiation, they take over every year the State Department and the Department of the Treasury. And we end up with the housing and urban development. When we bring in 20, 30, 40% of the vote, they bring in 2% of the vote in the money and walk away with all of the power. We really have to become more sophisticated in our politics and who we are and where we fit, as the brother said.
Well, absolutely, and make demands. Period. I mean, but the mother's milk, unfortunately, of American politics is money, and that's got to change. You need to have publicly funded elections, and stop making these politicians prey to all of this money. I mean, you got to walk into the U.S. House of Representatives raising money every day. You got to run every 2 years. Senators at least have a 6-year term, and they have a little bit of space. You're constantly running for office. You're constantly having to raise money. It's the most ridiculous thing. And I'm just telling you how it works. And that's not just because my brother's in there. I mean, I saw this with Congressman Gus Savage when I worked for him 30 years ago. It's just ridiculous. Just ridiculous. And we're all poorer for it, Rachel. I mean, this is ridiculous. And so now you've got 68% of Americans who want a ceasefire. but only 34 out of 435 members will even sign a resolution calling for it. I mean, what's the path forward, Rachel?
Yeah, I just want to say that let's be careful to disaggregate between AIPAC and Jews, because all Jews do not support AIPAC. So, AIPAC is disproportionately powerful and evil, for sure.
Stay on that for a minute, because there are some members of the Jewish community who are writing about that, and they are pushing back against AIPAC, because AIPAC pushes back on you.
AIPAC pushes back on me. AIPAC represses everybody. AIPAC is dreadful. And what AIPAC comes out of, I was so impressed by the conversation about decolonization and anti-colonization. Like, there is a Jewish tradition of support for regimes decolonizing and for anti-apartheid that gets totally subsumed by the Zionism that becomes so powerful in this country after 1967. So it's really important to me to disaggregate and say there are Jewish resistance traditions, there are Jewish internationalist traditions that always rejected Zionism. Zionism is a small, unfortunately very powerful right now, blip on the chart of Jewish history. So I think that that's important. And the other thing I wanted to say about sort of thinking about summing this conversation up is that all of this question of U.S. military support for Israel, U.S. police training in Israel, U.S. friendship with the IDF, the way that Israel acts as a proxy for the United States around the world in this hemisphere. If you think about the civil war in Guatemala, 50-year civil war, genocide against the indigenous people of Guatemala, that was very early supported by Israeli boots on the ground and advisors in terms of managing, quote unquote, managing the indigenous population. So I think we have to see, how pernicious Zionism is if we're thinking about liberation and decolonization. And I wanted to bring it around to a contemporary struggle in Georgia. We had the planned construction of Cop City on indigenous land in a predominantly African-American community, the last big stand of forest in the Atlanta area. If there is a Cop City, and we're seeing incredibly vicious repression of protesters there, gas and batons and people being beaten, and Tortuguita, one of the protesters, being murdered, with the claims that he was shooting back while he had his hands up. If they build Cop City and they will try their damnedest, right, they will be training the IDF. They will be training cops around this country to repress our movements. So we have to see the struggle against Cop City as part of the global struggle for decolonization, because it won't be just one Cop City. On Monday last week, when 106 of our comrades got arrested blocking the escalators to the Israeli consulate at Ogilvie Station, we had informal reports that the Israeli consulate was on the phone with the Chicago Police Department trying to lengthen the time they held the protesters. In what context does a foreign government get to intervene in the operations of a city police force, right? There's this weird Israeli exceptionalism, like, well, the Zionists are calling, so we should help them because they're so scared. That's a terrible moment, right? That there should be this outsized influence of the Israeli consulate on what is happening to American citizens in jail? No, right? So I think we have to really resist this global militarization that comes back to us in our cities in the form of militarized policing and repression at the sort of idea that we're supporting somehow Israel.
Well, Rachel, is it not now time for us to have this discussion? Because up until October 7th, you couldn't. And so when you were protesting, when you were pushing back against Cop City and looking at this young man, he wasn't even 30 years of age. They said, he was shooting. He was, he wasn't. He was shot at, like 29 times or something like that, something insane.
Yeah. With his hands up.
With his hands up. And you see the training, because the IDF is training a lot of our police forces. And this is the police state, y'all. Don't just put this on Israel. This is the police state coming in on all of us, Rachel, on all of us.
Yep.
And repressing all of us. And that is the problem. Do we need to call Israel out now? Absolutely. Should have done it a long time ago. But somehow or another, this is the moment. This is the zeitgeist. I'm with it. That having been said, I think that if we don't look at the larger overarching theme, we're going to miss something here, Rachel.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the song remains the same. We saw it we see it in regimes like Hungary and Italy. Far right nationalism is suddenly legitimated, right?
Argentina,
and there's always
last
like
night.
Argentina. Yep, and there's this it is always based on genocidal racism and repression that comes around to everybody. So just to my white Jewish comrades who are listening out there, we are not going to get a pass here. Our whiteness is temporary. It started after World War II. It can be taken away. Our best odds are to fight the repression with our allies, not to sort of opt for some sense that we're white, we're going to be fine, we're going to be all right. That is not the case. We see it all over the world.
So how did you get here in terms of your thinking? What?
For a long time, I've always been a leftist, and for a long time, I tried to avoid the issue of Israel because I knew how, from experience, from some just brushes with the American Jewish establishment, how very violent it is to go up against them and what they can do to you. And I was scared, honestly, and so I was, what they call progressive, except Palestine.
Wait a
and
minute.
I,
with good reason. Believe me, we've been in the crosshairs. We've been in the crosshairs with good reason. With good reason.
Yeah. Well, I'm an immigration historian. I worked on immigrant rights, so I could tell you a whole other story about how I think Israel-Palestine is very much a refugee issue. And, it got to be where I couldn't stand it anymore in 2014 with Operation Protective Edge. And, I couldn't stand what Israel was doing in my name, right? It's not just they're bad actors and they're murdering people, but they're doing it because they're saying Jewish safety is so important. And it just, I couldn't take it anymore. And I found others in Jewish Rights for Peace who were saying the same thing. And so when I did get fired from teaching Sunday school, those people were there saying, yeah, you got fired, and, those people are wrong. And so I started making a different life and a different relationship to Judaism. And what I say when people, and I do get asked this, why would you as a Jew ever be anti-Israel? Why would, it's because we are trying to save the beautiful, revolutionary, emancipatory tradition of Judaism from this racist, colonialist, apartheid nightmare. We represent, if not now, Jewish Voice for Peace, Never Again, Congregation Tzedek in Chicago, the first anti-Zionist congregation in the world. We represent the hope for Jewish, not the state of Israel. And that has been just, I'm getting chills talking about it, but it has been such a beautiful and important thing in my life. It has changed everything.
Does anyone want to respond to what this powerful testimony that Rachel just gave us?
Well, I just like to commend
Dwight,
being a person of good will and the spirit of love and caring you hear all over her voice. And I want to let her know that affection is reciprocal, that we love you all for loving us and for loving people who can't help themselves and can't defend themselves. It's such a noble place to be in such an ignoble world. And so I just want to applaud them for wanting to be right and do right. And let them understand that the same position that we take to protect those, the Israelis who are under siege, we would take to protect the Palestinians is under siege and the natives is under siege, that we would take to protect them when they're under siege. It is about the brotherhood of man and about a beloved community.
It really is, isn't it? It is about a beloved community. Rachel?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Dr. Gibbs. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Okay. I was trying to say that, there's also a Jewish tradition of taking unpopular positions and accepting the consequences of taking unpopular positions. Jews like Noam Chomsky, like Daniel Ellsberg, who are quite willing to take unpopular positions, knowing full well the consequences of that. And, there's a long tradition of that. And it's maybe ironic that now many Jews are taking unpopular positions with respect to Israel, a sacred cow of American foreign policy, if you want to call it that. And many of them are paying consequences for it. But, that is part of a Jewish tradition that they're part of. And it's, something to be proud of.
Does anyone, well, I mean, is there anything that's been left unsaid today, Netfa?
I don't think there is. I want to, in terms of I use comrade. I hope that's all right, comrade Rachel. That's my language. But I appreciate bringing up the connections. I mean, comrade and people. So in this country, they do so much to propagate. There's certain things people have aversions. Oh, you sound like a communist or something like that. Like, I am. First of all, there's nothing wrong with communism. But anyway, that's from me. But I appreciate drawing the connection between the police, the increasing police and militarization of the police and cop cities and the trainings through IDF. We do that in Black Alliance for Peace and member organizations. And how this whole settler Zionism is an enemy of everybody, of humanity, and not just the Palestinian people. And I appreciate making those specific points out, and also the BDS movement, which I think has been largely ignored, but has potential. Not ignored, the enemy sees the potential in it. That's why they come down on people. But there's a new potential for it now because of the emergence of the groundswell, and that particularly the boycott that first mentioned, it was Rachel described it, what it is, and how it's a just position, and even the sanctions part of it, which obviously the states only certain states have the power to implement sanctions, but we also have been showing, but the sanctions part of it can expose the hypocrisy of how the Western governments have used sanctions really as war under the guise of trying to scold and punitive measures against states that are not doing the right thing, quote unquote. And if we push this, that the whole BDS part, then that particular aspect of it has implications for the rest of the social justice movement in terms of exposing how the U.S. How sanctions are really used, even though we ourselves may not have the power to implement sanctions against the U.S. and no one does, or the Western powers, and that's why they can implement it against other people, but be absolved of them or immune to them. But putting it in there gives us an opportunity also to diversify the impact of this movement and its implications.
Let me get some closing thoughts from everybody here. Dwight, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I was also going to add that in the spirit of what we're talking about is how important the pacifists like Peter, Paul, and Mary and Jeremiah and that Jewish folk crowd was to our movement with Dr. King and
Bob
the civil
Dylan,
rights movement
and
Bob Dylan. Yeah. They always added a dimension to everything that we dealt with.
Well, hold on. What dimension? What did they add?
Spirit.
What did they add?
They added a humanity and a temperament that didn't exist anywhere else in the culture. They brought in a religious fervor and a humanity that we, were unable to find in the patriotism of the rest of white society. Is that you couldn't find it in the music of the rock and roll music, and you didn't find it in the patriotic music of John Philip Sousa, but you did find it in the folk music of Peter, Paul, and Mary, who talked about the brotherhood of man, and it added such dimensionality to the civil rights movement. And so I just like to bring that to an awareness as we put this beloved community back together to try to reintroduce this beloved community notion, is that it is not a new notion. It is just something that we've lost in the shuffle as we became more secularized. But in the beginning, we always had this spirit of mutual humanity, where we all fought for peace and love and equity for each other.
For each other. Robert Patillo, are you still there? I want to get closing thoughts from everybody here before we go. What a wonderful discussion, and people are applauding the honesty of this discussion. The honesty of this discussion. That's all I know how to do. That's the only way we're going to get from where we are to where we're supposed to be. Everybody, we've got to be honest. We have to be honest. We have to be honest and earnest and courageous. And Dr. Gibbs, your closing thoughts for today. Is there anything we haven't touched? Did Dr. Gibbs have to go? He might have had to go teach class. Well, let me see. Netfa? Is Netfa still there? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I don't. Closing thoughts. I just, keep struggling, keep fighting. We have to make sure that we keep fighting and that we find increasing ways to challenge the powers that be, and take opportunities. I think one of the things is we have to start doing some more mass political education so that we increase our numbers and the understanding of people, like workshops and teach-ins and putting up. We actually, Black Alliance for Peace, and I'm actually working on them right now. So we have a web page, resource page, blackallianceforpeace.com/Palestine. blackallianceforpeace.com/Palestine. And there's a lot of resources up there, and we probably should put a module for teach-ins or something like that. But we've been having those kind of things along with the demonstration, so we have to accompany our action, our direct action and mobilization with some political education for the regular people.
Oh, absolutely. You got to have teach-ins. Dwight McKee.
Again, the tradition of all of us are really parallel. It comes out the same basic tradition of the Old Testament and Micah and Amos, in that spirit of justice and let righteousness roll like water. Let justice roll like water and righteousness like a holy stream.
A mighty stream.
A mighty stream.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes out of the same tradition. And so when they raise the question, the answer, my friend, is rolling in the wind, the answer's in the wind. It's all of the reason we could identify and connect with that is, again, because it was all out the same tradition. Everybody from Mahalia to Peter, Paul, and Mary was really singing about the same thing. And once we understand the commonality of our experience and our aspirations, and and the fact that we all just people trying to find the best for themselves and for people around themselves, then I think we really can fight for a better world for everybody, not just for ourselves, but for everybody.
Well, Dwight, I think you make the brilliant point. It's not going to work unless we are fighting for everybody, because you're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself, because your neighbor is yourself. We're all in this together. Rachel, you have got the final word here. Is Rachel still there? Oh, well, she gave us.
I am. I just had to unmute. I'm here.
Hi, girl. The most brilliant thing you said when we're muted. Okay.
Totally. You wouldn't believe what I just said. I brought it all together in this brilliant way. No, I guess I just want to express my gratitude for this conversation and for the different voices that we've heard. And I'm just discovering this radio station, it makes us all feel saner when these voices are on the airwaves. So I just want to thank everybody for being a voice for peace and for sanity in this incredibly difficult time. So I'm just very appreciative.
Well, what do you want us to know?
I guess I guess it's important to me to say that there's a lot of us, there's a lot of us united by this call for peace. And I also want to hold up something my rabbi, Brant Rosen, said on Friday night about the word Yisrael in Jewish tradition. The word Yisrael meant kind of y'all.
Okay.
It meant us.
Okay.
And we are the people who struggle. That's who we are. That's from the Torah. So the hijacking of this notion that this is us into this ethno-nationalist project is really, it's a travesty, because there's a beautiful prophetic revolutionary tradition in Judaism that we're seeing emerge in the organizations, Never Again, If Not Now, Jewish Voice for Peace. That is ours. That is not new. It has been taken from us. And we are reclaiming it, and we are so happy to rejoin the movement for justice and equality, and to no longer be hijacked by this nightmare of ethno-nationalism. You know, a friend of mine who's a leftist asked me the other day, she was dropping me off, and she said, "So tell me about what anti-Zionism is, and does it really mean no Jewish state?" And I was like, "Yeah, it means that we share the road." And, how bad is that? We share the land. We live in a place, like, I personally, no one asked me, but, I live in this country. I've never been to the Middle East. But, if you asked me what Israel should be, I would say it should be a homeland for all the displaced people, because that is the revolutionary aspiration of Judaism, is to struggle with what is, and to provide refuge to all. So, I think this is a really important, really charged time that we come together in.
Amen to that. Dwight, I don't think there's anything to add. That really
Need not.
Need not.
God bless you, everybody. Shalom.
God bless you, everybody. God bless you.
Shalom.
Wait a minute. In your spirit, Rachel, to y'all. How about that? That was a good one. I was like, I got that. Okay. To y'all.
Like
that was a good one. I was like, okay, that's good. I'll never forget that one. That was a rich one. But may God bless you. And I hope that you will consider this your new home, because we need voices like yours on this issue and many others. We've got a lot of things to talk about.
Absolutely.
But I think, what's so attractive about this struggle, what's attracting us, is that it's a human struggle, individually and institutionally. Revenge, justice. We all have it in us, everybody. So before you get on a high horse and talk about what somebody ain't going to do, this is part of the human struggle. Human struggle is when someone has wronged you. The struggle is to seek justice, not revenge. That's what Dr. King said. No. Put down your guns. They didn't kill my wife and daughter tonight. But I'm telling you, with this horrific experience that Black people had in America, we have got to approach this whole system and the transformation of this system nonviolently and with love. That's the only way it's going to work. That is my prayer for our Jewish brothers and sisters, because they are who we are. That's my prayer for the Palestinians. I don't want them to walk out of this looking for revenge. I want them to look out of this as beacons of justice. And I want Jews to walk out of this doing the same thing. I want that for everybody. I want us to do it personally, in our personal lives. I want us to do it in our institutional lives. We need to do that. What did you say, Rachel? Let's share the road. My goodness. Are you going to take water out of somebody's mouth because you're sitting up on that ocean?
Yes, that is what they do.
Which is crazy. And and it's just it's believing that God is stingy. God likes you better than God likes me. God's going to give you more than God's going to give me. That is not how God does this. We need to stop humanizing God and let God be divine, and let's rise up to God. How about that? So God bless you all, and I cannot wait to have you back on the show, Rachel. Know that you have a home here with y'all.
Thank you.
Netfa. Yes, whatever you want to say, sweetie.
Just thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dwight, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And have a good morning, everyone.
God
have a
bless
good day.
you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving, everybody. God bless you.
Back at you.
Have a great day, everybody. I love you. God loves you more. Let's love each other.